Welcome back. I'm Roger Stone, and you're in the War Room. This has been an extraordinary week in American politics. We have seen between the revelations regarding Uranium One, where the Obama administration clearly covered up a corruption investigation that would have exposed the Russians in their quest to get 20% of the enriched uranium in the United States and mining rights worth billions, using a company in the Kremlin, which is essentially a front for the government. We saw the chickens come home to roost in the now thoroughly discredited famous Steele dossier alleging sexual shenanigans by Donald Trump, paid for, we now know, $9 million by Hillary Clinton, another $3 million, more than I had thought, from the FBI. Initially, it was reported as 50,000. The entire Russian narrative is now reversed. It's clear there was a major party candidate running for president, nominated by one of the two major parties in bed with the Kremlin. Unfortunately, that candidate is Hillary Clinton. Democrats cringe every time she opens her mouth now. Her punchback, her attempts to say, oh, this was just opposition research funded by the taxpayers. It's now abundantly clear that this ruse was used as an excuse to use the power of the state through wiretaps on Paul Manafort, and was used as the rationale for the FISA warrants that we now know both Carter Page and Paul Manafort were subjected to. This also was a factor in the decision to place the second wiretap on Manafort, in which nothing was found improper. 2 periods of being listened to by the government and no evidence of wrongdoing or crime. So the left is in full retreat. One of the other stories that has, in a certain sense, I think, had a relationship to this narrative is the JFK document release news. President Donald Trump, I think, courageously and correctly made a decision towards as much transparency as possible. I think he caught the intelligence services by surprise. They thought they were going to be able to talk him into utilizing his legal power to delay the release for 25 years. They are now trying to nullify his decision through a rear guard action in which they're redacting, censoring, and withholding enormous parts of the data. At least that's what the trend appears to be headed, because we only have the first batch of this final tranche of 31,000 documents. We know they have held back roughly 200 documents entirely, but the president would only agree to do so for 6 months while they are studied. Powerful members of Congress, like Senator Chuck Grassley, who is entitled to see all classified information, can certainly, if he runs a hearing, will be able to look at the original material and the redacted material and see if there is any potential claim to national security. But think of this. If the Warren Commission tells us that the federal government's position was that Oswald, although a communist, was not acting as an agent of any foreign state, then how can national security questions come into play, other than the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald has deep ties to both the Central Intelligence Agency and the FBI, that he was trained in the Russian language at a U.S. military intelligence training school, that he was recruited from the naval intelligence when he was a Marine, and he was working for them. That's why he left the country so easily and was able to return. He renounced his citizenship, but miraculously it was never revoked. So I think it sheds light on those things. Joining me now for the rest of this segment, and we'll take it into the next, because this woman is quite extraordinary. I speak of Beverly Oliver Massagee. Now, I met her at a conference in Dallas several years ago at the 50th anniversary. I was at a terrific conference, and they called on this stunning blonde woman to stand up and sing the national anthem. And she was amazing. I got to talk to her afterwards. She's a devout Christian, a great woman, in my opinion. Turns out to be a strong supporter of Donald Trump. But she also was, at age 17, merely feet away when John F. Kennedy's head exploded into a pink mist. She was carrying a camera at that time, confiscated by the FBI. Then, when she asked for her camera back, which she had been promised, of course, her camera and the film could not be found. There was some discussion in JFK research circles that she was the babushka woman for a lively headscarf. But that's not the point. What the point is the next round of this story. Because Beverly Oliver knows what FBI agent had responsibility for her camera, and she wonders whether this is among the new still secret material that we may come across. So welcome to the War Room, Beverly Oliver Massagee.
Thank you, Roger. It's good to be with you today. And without seeming overbearing or anything, I need to make a correction. My camera was not taken. It was only my film. And my camera disappeared in 1977.
I see. I apologize for that small point, but I stand by the rest of it. So you have really been, I think, depicted in the narrative of history as one of the few people who were close to this process, dragged into it. You were an entertainer, a dancer at the Colony Club, which was near the Carousel Club. You ran in social circles where you knew many of the Texans who were involved peripherally with the Kennedy assassination. And today you're a strong supporter of President Trump. What did you think of his decision to release the documents? Beverly is the author of a fine book there we just put up, which is Nightmare in Dallas. This is a terrific read. I devoured it in a day and a half, carrying it on airplanes. I commend it to you. Beverly, how do you think the president has handled the document issue so far?
I think he's done a fantastic job. Of course, I would have liked to see everything released with no redactions, just take it out as it is and dump it. I mean, it's been 44 years almost, and I think that we're grown enough to handle anything that comes out of those documents. It belongs to the American people to begin with. I never felt they had the right, legally or any other way, to lock it up to begin with. And certainly know that the story that they put out was not true. That our president was not shot by a lone gunman in the 6th floor of the book depository building. And so we have the right to the truth, and it's time now. It's long past time that they come forth with the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Beverly, we're going to go to a break here in just a moment. When we come back, I want you to walk through the events of that day and exactly what you experienced. And folks, you're at the War Room, and if you like our programming, then I urge you to go to the Infowars.com store. We're listener supported. It's only the Info Warriors that keep us pushing forward in the search for the truth. So please go right now to the Infowars.com store, where we have extraordinary discounts, and you can kick George Soros right in the head right now. Thanks. I'm Roger Stone, and I'll be right back. We are the tip of the spear. Joining me is Beverly Massagee Oliver, one of the eyewitnesses to the murder of our young, dashing, charismatic president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the first Roman Catholic president. And I want her to walk through not only quickly what happened to her that day regarding her film, and what she learned about the FBI agent who she was able, or the official who she was able to identify, and he is no longer with us. And she has, as I do, high hopes that the material that was released by President Trump will shed light on what happened to her film, because I'd like to know what her film shows. Beverly, walk us through that day quickly, and then tell us who the FBI man is that you identified.
Roger, I had been to a party that night over in Fort Worth, and when I came back that morning, I parked, my car was parked in the parking lot next to the college club where I was a singer, which happened to be next door to Jack Ruby's Carousel. And I started walking down Commerce Street with the intentions of walking up on the side road to get up close to the curb where I could get a film of the president. I had a brand new Yashica movie camera, and I wanted to get film of the president. And you couldn't get anywhere close to the curb. And I kept walking and kept walking. It led me down to what back then I called the grassy place, which now, is the grassy knoll. And I made my way over to where there were no people, which unfortunately was right at the end of the parade route. And I made my way up to just a few feet from the curb. And, of course, that's where the fatal shot happened. And I started filming just as the president turned left onto Elm Street. And then just as he got barely to my left, there was a big, just as he got onto Elm Street, I heard a sound that went bang, bang, bang. And I thought that was those little pop that the kids threw on the sidewalk, and it just popped, so you didn't have to lightning. And I distinctly remember thinking, why would somebody allow their kids to bring those down here? But just as the president got past me, there was a big sound that went ba-boom. And when that sound happened, the president went violently back, and it looked like the whole back of his head blew off and went over the back of the trunk of the car. And Jackie pushed him down with her elbow and crawled out over the back to get a piece of skull that was laying on the trunk of the car. And that's what happened. And I waited around for a little while, and no, I didn't go up grassy knoll, as some authors have said. I went across the street. I stood there thinking someone's going to want to talk to me. And I waited, and because back then, there were cell phones and stuff like that. And finally, I contacted the policeman I knew that worked the club down his name was Roscoe White. His wife was the hostess for Jack Ruby. And when I made eye contact with him, I felt the liberty to leave because I knew they knew where to find me. And I left and went home. And I didn't go to work until Monday night. And when I went to work Monday night, there were two men waiting on the landing of the stairwell. And it didn't alarm me or anything, because a lot of times people waited there for their company to catch up with them. But as I approached the two men, the taller one stepped forward, and he had the proper identification, and he had identified himself as being with the FBI. And he said, "We understand you were at the grassy place." He said, "Grassy, no," he said, "the grassy place." Taking pictures when the president was killed. I said, "I was taking a film." He said, "Yes, have you had it developed yet?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "Where's the film?" I said, "It's in my camera." He said, "Well, where is your camera?" Just like that. I said, "Well, here in my makeup kit." He said, "We want to take that film and develop it and look at it for evidence, and we'll get it back to you in a few days." Well, laying next to that camera in my makeup kit was a Prince Albert can of marijuana. So I very gladly handed him my camera. He took the film out of the camera. He gave me the camera back. I put it back, and I was glad to get out of there without them arresting me or knowing that I had the marijuana. A few years later, and I didn't come forward willingly. I'll say that right up front. I was drugged into this kicking and screaming. I never wanted to be a part of it because I was scared to death. But I think it was 1969 or 70, a researcher by the name of Gary Shaw. I became acquainted with him, and he showed me some mug books. He wanted me to pick out people that was hanging around the clubs during that time. And when I got to the second or third, I don't remember now, mug book, I got to a man, and I said, "That's the man that took my film." He said, "How sure are you?" I said, "I'm 99.99% certain that is the man that took my film." And lo and behold, it was Regis Kennedy. And guess who Regis Kennedy was? He was an FBI agent. And guess where he was? He was sent out that Monday to Dallas to help with the field work in Dallas with the assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And I do have in my possession a document that says the film which was taken by Beverly Oliver, not claimed to have been, not supposedly have been, the film which was taken by Beverly Oliver was not retained by this office.
Really extraordinary. Now, you were depicted in the Oliver Stone movie, JFK, which is an extraordinary piece of work. What did you think of the way they treated you?
Oh, I thought they did a great job. Now, I'm not a researcher, and so I don't know a lot about the theories. I don't know a lot about what other people think. I know what I saw that day, and I'm blonde. I'm naturally blonde, and so I have some blonde qualities, and one of them is that I honestly hope that maybe when they release that stuff that my film would be in it. And I also hope that someday they would open the murder case. It's still an open murder case in Dallas on the death. That I'd get together on a witness stand and raise my hand and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. And I don't want what I saw that day to be corrupted and with what other people saw and what other people heard and what other people believe. I want it to remain what I saw and what I heard. And so that's why I don't do it.
Okay, well, here the quick answer. This question is very clear. Is there any doubt in your mind whatsoever that Vice President Lyndon Baines Johnson orchestrated the death of John F. Kennedy?
I think he had something to do with it. Yes, I do.
That understates it. All right, thank you very much.
To be quite honest with you,
I mean,
to be quite honest with you, I don't think he was smart enough to orchestrate it.
Yeah, in the circles that you ran in, among the Texas political elites, I think it's pretty known that LBJ would do whatever it took. As you know, Bobby Baker, his right-hand man, tells a Kennedy aide on Inauguration Day 1961 that John F. Kennedy will die a violent death and not live out his term. So anyway, I urge you, oh my goodness, I urge you to go immediately to my book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. Courage and fortitude, who has really pushed for nothing but getting her film back and explaining exactly what she saw that fateful day. She was not political in the days when she was in her teens and working in the entertainment industry. She is a big hit on the evangelical gospel circuit as a motivational speaker and singer, a woman of enormous charisma, and I thank her for joining us here on the War Room. But the biggest news broken by InfoWars this week was the identity of the Republican money man who financed the initial iteration of the famous PP-Gate dossier of smears against Donald Trump. We have identified the funder, and interestingly, the Daily Caller has a piece today in which they talk about the search for the magical funder, who's only identified so far as a Republican. The New York Times and the Washington Post, some of their very best political and investigative reporters, are in a mad dash to find out who the secretive money man is. But we at InfoWars broke the story 2 days ago. Paul Singer, the hedge fund manager, who is a major anti-Trumper, and who was a major funder of a number of the PACs, super PACs that worked on behalf of Marco Rubio and even Jeb Bush, and his political operative Sancho Panza, a man named Dan Sino, are the progenitors of the famous smear dossier. Now, this dossier took on a life of its own, financed initially by Singer, who is considered a moderate Republican, and a down-the-line Trump hater, aligned closely with the Koch brothers and others who would like to take the president down. We are confident, so confident in our sources that Singer is the funder, with Sino as the behind-the-scenes operative. We also have traced Sino to the outer reaches of the question of why NBC held the so-called Billy Bush interview as late as they did, and what the catalyst was for its release. Sino seems to be in this scandal as well. So once again, Rob Dew, you were there. We broke the story before anybody.
That's true. In fact, I initially said it was John McCain, thinking, I know McCain had, and I'm like, why are they not even mentioning it's John McCain? This is weird. And I brought that up to you. You go, no, I know who it is. And we're on our way to CNN, actually, to confront them, because while this news was breaking about that the DNC and Hillary Clinton were funding the dossier, CNN's got stuff about some actor, some children's voice actor dying, and Kelly Clarkson didn't enjoy life being thin. That was in their buzzing news panel. They weren't even talking about it. It took them the next day, Roger. We were out Tuesday night. It was the next day, I think around 11 o'clock. I was watching it on CNN flying home on JetBlue, because they have that. We were watching Anderson Cooper try to finagle his way to say that, oh, this is no big deal. This is opposition research. Yet if anybody else does opposition research, they're Russian agents.
No, here's why this is not opposition research. Because taxpayer dollars ended up being used to promulgate it. So it was initially funded privately by Singer and then Hillary. But then the feds throw in an astonishing $3 million to keep Steele working, looking for information to take Donald Trump down, when what they have is fabricated.
And I noticed that number keeps going up, Roger. It was first, it was a few thousand, 50,000. Now it's up to 3 million.
That's exactly right. So Rob Dew and I stormed the CNN headquarters demanding truth. And what we got instead was a hostile security guard who said, hey, what do you guys want? So in any event.
Did they try to give you guys an apple?
No, he did
explain. Did explain, and Mr. Dew resists this, but it is correct. In New York City, the establishment does own the sidewalk outside of the Time Warner Center, and therefore, if one were demonstrating, one would need a permit. We, of course, are in the news industry.
And we weren't demonstrating.
We know where the story is.
Exactly. We weren't demonstrating. I think we were perfectly legal to be there. I would have gladly have talked to a few of New York's finest. I think they would have been on our side for this, especially. I'm starting to develop a New York accent talking about it right now. But just being in that cauldron of grossness, because I've been there back in 2012 when Alex did the Piers Morgan show, and just being back there, you could just smell the stench back in the air, and just the fact that they were refusing to cover, which was breaking news everywhere else except on CNN. It was, some child actor, voice actor died.
Dew and I demanded to see Anderson Cooper. They refused to produce it.
Right.
Okay, so I said, send Mike Smirkanish. They said, he's not into it. I said, okay, so then send Tapper out here. We want to have this out. And of course, we were repelled. It was outrageous.
And you had breaking news. You had breaking news right there. We were going to give to CNN. We knew who the money man was. Nobody else knew who he was. You've got your sources. And so far, I just went and looked. Nobody else has reported on this. Zero from the mainstream media, not calling us out as fake news, not calling us out as anything, not saying a word about it. They're going to pretend Paul Singer doesn't exist now.
No, actually, in all honesty, the sources at the New York Times and the Washington Post just aren't as good as ours. I feel confident about reporting this. If anybody wants to dispute it in a lawsuit or something, we would prevail. I am absolutely positive because of the quality of my source. The Times and the Post are chasing this story furiously. Yes, they'd like to know. It's too tantalizing not to name the Republican money man, but I don't think they've nailed it yet. I predict we will be verified, validated, confirmed by the mainstream media shortly.
Roger, go ahead, Roger.
No, and the other thing that was interesting was the denial they seem to have about uranium one and so on. Don't you think the cat is out of the bag here in terms of who was a Russian, comp sympathizer?
Well, I'm glad that you went there, because that's where I wanted to go too. You had Hillary completely denying the uranium one scandal, even though we literally have the paper documents and everything. And a shocking twist of logic. CNN writes a story. Trump campaign analytics company contacted WikiLeaks about Clinton emails. They admit in this email that people connected to Trump and the Trump campaign were reaching out to WikiLeaks looking for emails, but then that actually refutes the overall story that says that Trump was colluding with Russia, because they also say it was Russia that got those emails. So why would they go to WikiLeaks, which was the middleman, if they were already in cahoots with the Russians? But Roger, what do you make of this? Nobody seems to know where this dossier came from. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, no idea. Tom Perez, what are you talking about? Hillary Clinton, I didn't know.
Nobody knows nothing.
Nobody knows nothing, Roger. How is that possible?
No, it's a classic Democratic cover-up. They are so busted. And the point, of course, is that this memo was used as an excuse for extra legal activities, the wiretapping of Trump and Trump Tower, the unmasking. They created this diversionary memo to justify the use of government resources and power to spy and conduct political espionage on Trump and his associates, including yours truly. There's no link between WikiLeaks and Cambridge Analytica. Assange himself has denied that. But this is part of the deep state effort to declare Assange a Russian asset when he isn't one. He's a journalist, and a damn good one. You're here.
And they've got a gaggle of press surrounding them trying to prop up this lie. That's the best part of this whole story.
It's truly shocking. We'll talk more about that. And I want to get in a little bit of the JFK files with Roger on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. Classic there, Booker T and the MGs with Green Onions, one of the better music choices for the team here at Infowars.com. We are stunned by the very tumultuous turn of events where Donald Trump decides to release the still classified and secret documents regarding the JFK assassination. The release is mandated by a 1992 JFK Records Act passed by both houses of Congress and signed by President George H.W. Bush, albeit reluctantly, because he probably knows the files are not good for him, and indeed they're not, demonstrating that although George H.W. Bush said for 30 years that he couldn't remember where he was the day that John Kennedy was shot and killed. No adult, no one who was cognizant in 1963 can forget where they were in that stunning moment. I was in the first grade and the children around me were crying. I was a hard shell Nixon Republican even then, but even I was touched when I saw a picture on the cover of the New York Daily News of young John Kennedy saluting his father's casket. Bush dissembled, according to documents that were released under the Records Act, about his whereabouts that day and in the days after. But more importantly, the deep state has now moved aggressively in conducting a rear guard action to redact, censor, and hold back so much of the information that the president has ordered released that the documents will become worthless, meaningless, incomprehensible. Researchers and historians will learn nothing. I know that there is concern about this in the Congress, that the deep state is now thwarting the intention of a congressional act, the intent of Congress and the law of the land to hide essentially matters that they claim pertain to the national security, when all they pertain to is their trail of lies. The CIA has lied about every major event in our lifetimes: the Kennedy assassination, the Vietnam War, Iran-Contra, the Gulf of Tonkin, the lie that got us into Vietnam. They lied about the trafficking of narcotics to pay for the illegal war against the Contras. They lied about weapons of mass destruction in the hands of Saddam Hussein. They lied about torture in U.S. prisons during the Iraq War. They have a consistent track record of lying and leaking. And what they seek to conceal is that the things they were doing then are the same things they are doing now. The idea that these documents would somehow harm their sources, methods, or operations are ludicrous. No one who was working for the government then is working for them now. Nobody significant. So it's CYA time. They know they are tied to Oswald. They know that Oswald is an FBI informant. It makes them look incompetent or duplicitous.
Yeah, I agree, Roger. And also, I was interested in this that came out today. Jack Ruby supposedly was mad at Lee Harvey Oswald and went in there and took him out. Well, now there's information that they met in Cuba and were heard discussing the term Big Bird, which we know Lady Bird Johnson was the nickname for the president, the first lady, or the vice president's wife at the time, who became first lady, Lady Bird Johnson. So they were talking about Big Bird. And there they are. The pair were seen together in Florida's West Keys Airport in 1963, speaking in code, according to the documents. So that has come out. And then we have, of course, Jack Ruby shooting Lee Harvey Oswald and then dying mysteriously of a fast-acting cancer.
And some of the highlights that were intriguing to me, Roger, most of which you already covered before these files were even released. The KGB believes that it was Lyndon Baines Johnson behind the assassination of JFK. You wrote a book about that. The files revealed that Lee Harvey Oswald was indeed a government agent. The files revealed that there were indeed multiple shooters. The files revealed that J. Edgar Hoover had to convince the public that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. These are just some of the ones I'm trying to recall off the top of my head. But Roger,
KGB the KGB one is a good call there, Owen. Look, I revealed that in my book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. It is now completely validated in these documents. It is going to be very interesting to see what the diaries of E. Howard Hunt reveal. The deathbed confession of the legendary CIA operative E. Howard Hunt was broken nationally by Alex Jones in those incredible interviews involving his son, St. John Hunt. Hunt revealed that the murder of Kennedy was a CIA operation, that General Edwin Lansdale, the operator who was hired to oversee the CIA by the Kennedys and turned on them, was on the ground, that Lyndon Baines Johnson, as he put it, was calling the shots. So again, my book validated. Right now, I have teams of people going through the first tranche of released documents, and the redactions are very considerable. Now, there's a lot of concern about this on Capitol Hill. The guy who's really a hero, in my opinion, really a crusading member of Congress who may be the last honest man, Walter B. Jones of North Carolina, working with Democrats, building bipartisan consensus to release these secret documents and stop the cover-up. Very disturbed members of Congress about how the agency has tried to launch this last-minute rear guard action to cover up their crimes and lies. And the president knows that the American people are overwhelmingly in favor of full disclosure and transparency. It's time to know what happened. But let's remember this. If the federal government is telling us that Lee Harvey Oswald, although a nut communist, is not an agent of a foreign power, then how can anything regarding him damage the national security? There's their fundamental problem.
Another key point that I forgot to mention that was revealed in this first release of documents was the fact that they admit that the CIA puts journalists into positions in the media. That said in the release they had at least 40 members in the media. So think about that, 40 members in the media that were actually government cutouts.
In the early 60s.
In the early 60s, exactly. So think about all the news organizations that they could span with that. Think about how they can rig false narratives and rig talking points with that. And then think about what that could mean in the year 2017. I would guess they probably have closer to 400 people working in the media for them now. But Roger, you know, again, I think that we kind of got more than we expected in this release, but it was everything that we expected all along.
Well, look, I'm looking forward to seeing what else we learn. They have still only released a fraction of the 3,100 documents scheduled for release, and it's important to note that they're holding back another 200 documents, which in a way they're pointing to the things that incriminate them the most. The president wouldn't agree to just block those for all time. He gave it a 6 months for review. My source said they tried this. Mr. President, there's no time for you to read all this, but take our word for it. You shouldn't let these be put out. It would make everybody look bad. And he says, no, I think I'd like to see the stuff before we decide that. It is absolutely crucial to know that we have a phone conversation between LBJ, the president, and J. Edgar Hoover, in which they're discussing Oswald's alleged visit to Mexico City, where he supposedly went to the Soviet and Cuban embassies. And Hoover tells Johnson, there's one problem. The photographs of the man identified at the embassies does not look like the Oswald who was blown away by Jack Ruby. And the portions of the documents just released regard Mexico City. So I'm hopeful that we will get some illumination of that. We also know that a man went to a number of the charter charter air services located at Love Field, and inquired widely about the possibility of chartering a plane from Texas to Mexico, presumably a plane that would be hijacked to Cuba. But when shown, and the man identified himself as Lee Harvey Oswald, but when shown a picture of the Oswald, every one of the employees of the charter services said, no, that's not the man. Will be right